Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share my full review, the digitally digested segment, for the Sigma 100 to 400 millimeter DG/DN lens. Now, I've got my A7R4 in a very vulnerable position, so let's change that position. Now I don't have to worry about dust hitting that sensor, but it still was a cool look for the opening, in my opinion, and that's why I did it. Now, let's talk about this. $950 US for something that I feel does directly compete with my G Master Sony 100 to 400 mil lens. And that says a lot because the G Master is, well, much more expensive than this piece of glass, and it's also larger and heavier. So, is this worth your money? In my opinion, it absolutely is. Now, unlike the Sigma 14 to 24, which I have right here, these are both going back, sadly. Wish I could hold on to both because they are that impressive. What I will say is that with the 14 to 24, I really feel that it directly takes on the G Master counterpart, and if you missed that video, you already know I think it's worth every dollar, and I actually, for that reason, because it is so effectively priced, I would pick it any day over the G Master because of how aggressive Sigma has been with pricing on that. This, a little bit of a different opinion. So my take on the 100 to 400 is that Sigma's given us a really great value-oriented lens. I do not feel that it outclasses my G Master 100 to 400 lens, but it comes really close. And the fact that it comes really close at such a low price, again, $950, whereas the G Master is $2,500, so it's less than half the price. It again is one of those deals that's hard to refuse. Now, it's not like the mob is twisting your arm. It's really a matter of your budget and what you're interested in. But I have to say, I didn't feel that any of the shots I got out of this were bad. Were they necessarily as good as the G Master? No, but very close. And that's why I think anyone who is looking for this focal range should be taking a long look at it. Again, $950 gives you a lot of headroom to get other glass that you potentially need for other things. And sometimes that's better than having a G Master. What else can I say? Now, this is made in Japan, like pretty much all of Sigma's products, specifically glass. And build quality is very good. The one thing you will not get out of the box, I didn't even get it with my review sample, is a lens collar. That is an optional, a proprietary part that you'll have to buy separately. And I think that's one of the biggest complaints that users have of this, is that if they want the lens collar, it didn't come with it. But I really think that's a bit of crap because, you know, when you consider it's $950, I think that it really isn't a big deal that it didn't come with a lens collar. Also, I can see why you would want to have one, obviously, for mounting purposes, but it isn't necessary. It does get heavy, but hand holding this, I had no problems with my A7R4. I also shot this with my A7R2. It spent a little bit of time on the A7S III, but this isn't what, I mean, granted, you could of course use it. This wasn't my ideal lens for video, but it certainly does shoot well both in the still and video world. The other thing I want to mention is the lens hood, and that probably is going to be my biggest criticism. And if that's my biggest criticism of this lens, Sigma has outdone themselves. Again, a $950 piece of glass, so it is very affordable in the world of full frame E-mount. But this lens hood being all plastic and really just not exuding the quality of the lens itself, I would have liked to have seen a nicer, more premium lens hood. But I'm nitpicking, aren't I? I mean, we don't buy lenses for their hoods, but we do notice when a really good lens has a mediocre hood, and that's what I would call this. Especially when I look over at my G Master, I mean, it's just in another league, but that's not what the review is about. It's really about how well this performs, the control that it has, your focus mode, essentially all of the same features that you get with the G Master, your stabilization, your lock. It's all here. Both the focus as well as the actual zoom ring work pretty much perfectly. I mean, smooth throughout. It is a pumper, as you might have imagined. There was no way they were going to keep a 100 to 400 internalized in a lens this size. But to give you perspective, before I mount it onto the A7R4, move that out of frame, let's bring in the G Master, because I've already told you, optically speaking, it is really, really close. But take a look at size. And yes, I'll take off the actual lens hood so that you can see that. And yeah, the G Master comes with the actual mount, but is a lens collar worth $2,500 versus $950? Absolutely not. This has to be about the quality of the glass. And what I can tell you is, as I stated earlier in this video, the G Master is not separated. They're not worlds apart. That's my best way of putting it. I often will refer to things that way because often things are worlds apart. Here, they're not. Do I prefer my G Master? Yes. So the conclusion of me using this glass is that I'm not going to go out and sell my G Master and pick this up. But if I needed to, I would. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. In other words, the quality difference, the gap is not large enough that I would in any way say forget about the Sigma offering and only go with the G Master. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. I think that the majority of people that were buying the G Master 100 to 400, like myself, didn't necessarily need it for paid jobs. They wanted it for hobby. That's what I purchased it for. I love birding. I happen to live in a community that's got more birds than you could imagine, and this is an ideal piece of glass. It's compact for what it's able to deliver, and with the A7R4's resolution and autofocus system, it's a match made in heaven. The good news is I got basically the same performance out of the Sigma, and had the Sigma been available when I purchased this, I have to say I would have purchased the Sigma, because the difference between them is so marginal, but the price is tremendous. And this is common. I mean, with the Sigma 14 to 24 DGDN, the same can be said. You know, when you look at its G Master counterpart, or even the non-G Master, it's still less expensive, and yet it outperforms the non-G Master, which is an f4 Sony piece of full frame glass, and then the G Master, it basically is, you know, neck and neck with, and yet it's half the price. Here, a similar proposition being made. I do like the overall build of the G Master more than the Sigma. I can't say that about the wide angle that I was just mentioning, the 14 to 24. I feel like the build quality in some ways is actually better than Sony's G Master, which some people would be shocked at. Here, I do think the G Master has a better build, but that's really subjective. It's completely a matter of personal preference, just like the aesthetics of the lens. I happen to like the aesthetic of the G Master, but that's not why we buy these, is it? It's about performance, and it's about what we're paying for that performance. So I would still pick the G Master over the Sigma, but that's if budget is not a concern. And for the majority of human beings, budget is always a concern. Even if you have more money than you know what to do with, wealthy people, if you didn't know it, they tend to be the ones that don't like to spend money because they collect it, don't they? That's their hobby. So I personally would tell everyone, you know, get the G Master if it's within your means, but do not overlook the Sigma. It's a sleeper. It's well reviewed, well rated, and for good reason. This lens is built well, and I really didn't have any part of the range where things fell apart. I mean, even at 400 millimeters, things were still sharp. Were they as sharp as the G Master? No, not quite. So that's where the G Master does have an edge. But when, you know, you think about it, it still performs almost as well. And yeah, the G Master comes with a lens collar. Whoop-de-doo. You're paying $2,500 as opposed to $950 US before tax. The controls are essentially identical. The weight is very similar. The G Master, I believe, is a little bit heavier, but the actual modes that each lens affords you, you can see right there, virtually identical. You know, again, so what is the real difference here other than branding and ultimately the price and where the lens was actually made? Now, if my memory serves, the G Master was not, well, this one was made in Japan. It's been a while since I looked at the Made in logo on this. And a lot of the G Master glass, well, some of it, not a lot, some of it is made in Japan. I wouldn't be shocked if there are copies of this now made elsewhere, because this was the first wave of 100 to 400 G Masters. With Sigma, you're always getting made in Japan quality and quality control, and that's something I really do like about this lens. Now, can I tell you that it is worth the $950? Absolutely. In fact, I don't think you will find a better 100 to 400 millimeter option for Sony's full frame E-mount cameras. And remember, you can use this with APS-C as well. I think this is a great pairing with the A7C as well, because, you know, part of what you're paying for with the G Master is the ability to resolve more megapixels. Now, I saw no evidence of the Sigma 100 to 400 failing in any way. I pixel peep, but I'm not the most extreme. Others out there are. Let's just take a look at what it actually looks like, again, on the A7R4, which is my favorite hybrid on the market right now. I think it really does represent the best of both worlds if your interests lie in both still and video. It's hard to beat it, at least until the next revision. So when an A7R5 comes along, we'll have something to talk about. But until then, if you want the best of both worlds, I think the A7R4 still delivers that, even though it's missing some key features that, of course, now live in the realm of the A7S III and what should be coming with the A7 IV. So overall, the 100 to 400 in terms of handling is good. I already mentioned both the focus and zoom rings are smooth. You know, the pumper style, I said it already, it's what you're going to find with all of these 100 to 400s. If somehow the G Master was internalized, that would be magical, right? But it's not. The G Master is not internalized. I do think, as I stated earlier, that the lens hood is better. You have a little bit more control with the G Master, if that wasn't already apparent right here. That doesn't exist on the Sigma, but if that's the difference for the price, I don't know what to tell you. You know, you do have a lock switch. Not that that's something to get too excited about. But it's still something that I expect. And again, at $950, even without a lens collar, I just don't know how you beat this. That's what it really comes down to. So if budget is necessary, but you don't want to compromise, in other words, you're not looking for the least expensive and expecting the worst performance, I have good news. This is the most affordable 100 to 400 E-mount lens, and it also happens to be very good at what it does. And that's exactly what I was hoping for. So if the day comes that I do need to redeem that check, aka sell my G Master, which is still in mint condition, especially because this pandemic certainly didn't put too much wear and tear on it, really only shooting in my neighborhood, because that's basically the only safe place where I live, frankly. I could see selling this and transitioning to the Sigma. I really could. And that's because, again, I didn't see a drop-off in quality that was sharp enough for me to say, you know, I don't think I could live with the Sigma. So Sigma deserves credit here, just like they do with the 14 to 24 DGDN, in making much more affordable glass for Sony full-frame mirrorless cameras. And of course, this is compatible with APS-C as well, but if I were you, now that we have an A7C, which is essentially a full frame in an APS-C body, I wouldn't consider APS-C anymore unless you're going back to even smaller builds, which you're going to give up features left and right. I don't support, you know, fresh money going backwards. But I could see myself giving up the G Master and moving to this lens. Am I going to do it anytime soon? No. Is it a possibility in the future? Absolutely, because again, the performance really was that close. Handling, I do prefer with the G Master, but that really depends on the user. Some people may prefer the profile of the Sigma 100 to 400. It's more narrow. It's not as robust in terms of coming out. It's not as wide a build, and that may be a reason to prefer it. I've already stated when it comes to lens hoods, I know that the Sony is ridiculously large, but I'm happy about that. I feel it affords me a little bit more protection on the G Master front end lens element, and I want that on such an expensive piece of glass. If I were to purchase the Sigma, I would probably look to replace their included lens hood. That's just me. But there's nothing wrong with it. It's completely functional. I just would want something a little bit larger. That's just my own personal opinion and something that was a little bit more solid feeling. Again, I'm nitpicking because there's really so much to like about this lens. It's tough for me to come up with anything bad here, folks. Again, construction is solid, made in Japan, great quality throughout its 100 to 400 range. And if you've been looking for a 100 to 400 lens, at least you've got a solid, affordable option that didn't exist when the G Master launched. This really was in a class by itself. Now it's in a class that can be undercut by Sigma's DGDN alternative. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. Hit that like button. And as usual, please feel free to subscribe and please stay safe. Later.